soccer fans? Welcome to the Soccer Brothers Podcast. This is episode number 81. I'm your host, Sahil, and I'm excited to talk to you guys today about the United States 4-0 win over Panama in their last World Cup qualifier. It was a nice night in Orlando, a very good crowd. They had very good coordinated chants and just a vibrant atmosphere, and I love to see that at USMNT games. Going into this game, though, I was pretty nervous. I didn't know what to expect, really. We've seen up and down performances throughout this World Cup qualifying cycle, but I knew what was on the line in this game. I knew that if we lost this game, and which, it's not that common for us to lose at home, particularly to Panama, but I knew that if we lost this game, that we're going to have to play for that fourth Interconfederation playoff spot, which is never a guarantee. We saw in our last playoff type match that we lost to Mexico to try to qualify for the Confederations Cup. So I knew that those aren't gimmies, those aren't guarantees, and I want this qualifying cycle to end now. And it looks like we're in pretty good position to do that now because we went in, got a 4-0 win, and if we win at Trinidad and Tobago now, we are through to the World Cup in Russia, and I'm very excited about that. But I got to talk about this game, which is a very exciting game. Going into this game about an hour and a half before, I saw Bruce Arena released the lineup, and it was either a 4-3-1-2 or a 4-1-2-1-2, depending on how you want to look at it, depending on how you want to interpret it. But the best part about that is that there's that fourth one that you see in both formations, I guess third one, if you're calling it a 4-3-1-2, because that means that our wonder kid, number 10, Christian Pulisic, is sitting beneath the two strikers, which is where I wanted him to be for so long. It's hard for him not to create in that position. Him out wide, he can get a little bit away from the game, but him at that number 10 position, he's going to make things happen. So that was the formation. I liked it, and once I saw that, I was a little bit more confident about our chances. And why don't I get right ahead into the goals of the game, and then I'll talk a little bit more generally about the game, what I liked, what I didn't like, just my general thoughts. And that's normally how I cover games, so if you're listening, you're probably used to that, but why don't I get right into it? So in the 8th minute, Tim Howard has a very nice goal kick, which hits Bobby Wood, flicks on his header. That falls to Josie Altidore, who just one-times it to Pulisic. It's a little bit behind Pulisic, but he brilliantly deals with it with his left foot to get it forward and keep on going with his momentum. And eventually, he beats Jaime Pinedo, the Panamanian keeper, rounds him, and puts him in the back of the net as he falls over and then celebrates. This is in the 8th minute. So very early on in the game, set the tone nicely. Pulisic, just great composure, great speed, great pace, great dribbling, great touches, great everything, great finish. It was a good goal. It was a very good goal. It was a very mature goal. A lot of times you'll see young players kind of in those situations where you have an open net or where you're one-on-one with the keeper, you mess it up. But Pulisic just dealt with it very well. And I like I think it was Casey Keller who said this post game. He said, you just knew he was going to score it. You just knew that he's the type of kid that's going to put those chances away. And I knew it, and I was very excited, and Pulisic was very excited based on a celebration. I was actually talking to my brother about this. He said, Pulisic needs to learn how to celebrate. And yeah, I'll agree with that. I'll agree with part of that. Pulisic celebrations are very uncoordinated and just look kind of silly, but I kind of like that because you just know it's pure passion coming from Christian Pulisic, and it's just pure excitement, and he's just happy to be there, and I love it. And he also celebrated his next, not goal, but his next assist, which I will get to right now. In the 19th minute, Nagbe played a long ball up to Pulisic up the field, and Pulisic just is one-on-one with the defender, beats him one-on-one, gets down to his left foot, his weak foot, and crosses it to Altidore perfectly. And Altidore just has a very easy chance, and he slots it home. Really just on a golden platter for Altidore. So great assist, great footwork by Pulisic, and Altidore in the right spot, right time, puts it away. And 2-0, 19 minutes gone. Things are looking pretty good. The U.S. looks a little bit more confident. The stadium's roaring. I was really excited, and rightfully so. We kind of had more good chances for the rest of the half, which I'll talk about a little bit more later. But in the 41st, in the 41st minute, Bobby Wood makes a good run and draws a penalty. It's kind of arguable whether you want to call this a penalty. I do think he was being fouled before he actually went down, but it's arguable that foul started like outside of the box as he was going in. So very tough. But in the 43rd minute, Altidore finishes it with a very cheeky Panenka. It was really cool to see, but also, those can be risky. I hope he doesn't try something like that in the World Cup. Let's just put it that way. So in the second half, we scored only one goal, but that was kind of, to be expected. The game's going to slow down a little bit in the second half. We're going to try to possess it a little more. We're going to try to just hold back and defend. But I did think we did a good job of keeping the press on a little bit at certain points throughout the second half. But anyways, in the 64th minute, Areola had a really good run and layoff in a tight window, and Wood just makes a good turn and just has a composed finish. And it's also worth noting that Bobby Wood was the one that got the ball out wide to Areola, so he got his own cocky assist there. So, those were the goals, and I will say that outside of those goals, there were a little bit of defensive lapses. I remember early on, Gonzalez got beat by Gabriel Torres, but that was just good dribbling by Gabriel Torres, and you're going to concede a couple chances to him. He's pretty explosive in the final third there, and but overall, I think that we played pretty well. I thought that Pulisic actually, besides just his goal and assist in the first half, did pretty well. It was once Panama started beating him up a little bit, started going in for rough challenges, that he started to get a little bit, worse. I think that in the second half, in the 48th minute, he got subbed off for just a second, and then ran back on, and then got subbed off 8 minutes later. If I were Bruce Arena, I would have subbed him off right when he came off, because I just don't think it's worth risking it, especially when we have a game against Trinidad and Tobago on Tuesday. But Pulisic made some really good moves. Drew a lot of fouls, obviously, and some of them were drawn well, and some of them were just malicious from the Panamanians, but great things to say about him. I thought Bobby Wood did really well to boost some attacks, make some great runs, some great flick-ons. There was a chance where Pulisic overlapped Christian Pulisic, and Pulisic just kind of took it for himself selfishly and took a shot that went out for a corner. I think that Pulisic should have laid it off to Bobby Wood there. But I just really liked what I saw from Bobby Wood. Very energetic, very, very good play by him. And I think he played the whole 90 minutes, yeah. So very good 90 minutes by Bobby Wood. Josie Altidore, good for most of the game. He had 2 goals, one of them a penalty. I would say that Bobby Wood kind of edged him in terms of who is kind of producing more on the field for most of the game. But either way, I'm liking that they're coordinating, but you can just tell that special piece that links that whole trident together is Pulisic. So, And then and I think that Pulisic allowed Bradley to just really sit back and do what he not necessarily does best, but what he's very good at, which is kind of dropping back in between the center backs when he needs to, winning loose balls, getting some interceptions, and starting the attacks. In the past, we've seen Bradley in positions where he's a bit too high, has to do a little bit too much, but I think that Pulisic gave a little bit less pressure off Bradley and really the whole midfield, because I think that Nagby was able to preserve himself. We didn't really need to rely on his electrifying runs as much, and he had a good mix of staying out wide and kind of coming in to help Michael Bradley. And Paul Areola, I know I've been critical of him on the podcast before, but I think that if we have this kind of chemistry up top and all this talent that we have on the pitch at once, I think that Paul Areola can play a good role. I just think that in games where we need a little explosiveness from those wide players, Areola doesn't necessarily cut it. His delivery isn't good enough for if defenders are specifically marking the wingers with a lot of pressure, because he just doesn't have that kind of delivery to even get past some of the first people marking him. But if our centerpieces, our center attacking mid and our strikers, our center forwards are posing that much of a threat, then there's a little bit less pressure from the defense onto our wingers. And we saw Paul Arriola can do in those kind of situations, getting the assist on that second goal. So good work from Paul Arriola. Sorry for whatever I said before. And in the back, I thought there were a couple of mistakes by Matt Wiesler and Omar Gonzalez, but that's to be expected. It was good to see DeAndre Yedlin back. Now, that's probably something I should have talked about at the beginning. Yedlin is a very good player. Very, very fast. He's gotten way smarter playing that fullback position than he used to be. Just works hard, and he made some good surging runs forward, actually. And I think one time he got central. He made a huge run and then got centrally in the 65th minute. And it's just great to see our fullbacks getting involved, but also doing their job in the defensive third as well. So, so I thought DeAndre Yedlin did a great job. Good to see that he's healthy now. He's back on track. And Jorge Villafana, probably, one of the players that I just wasn't impressed with. I thought he got exposed on a couple occasions, and I just don't know if his defensive play was up to snuff. And I don't think it usually is. I think he's a left back that's mostly attacking focused, but I think I'm nitpicking a little bit because it was a good performance overall. I guess I can quickly talk about the substitutes as well. So Dax McCarty, he made his World Cup qualifying debut, and he did pretty well. I think that he did well to not only hold down the game a little bit, hold down the midfield in the second half, but also create a couple chances. There were a couple through balls that he played that were very nice, and really, really did well. And that was a great substitution, him for Pulisic in the early part of the second half. Clint Dempsey, the crowd was chanting, "We want Dempsey" or something like that. And that was really cool to see just because the crowd just getting so involved. We've seen some kind of subpar crowds throughout this World Cup qualifying cycle. And it was really nice to see the crowd ask for Dempsey. And he didn't manage to score. He didn't manage to beat Landon Donovan for the record for most goals to the USMNT. By the way, we interviewed Landon Donovan on this podcast. It's episode number 60 if you want to check it out. Back on track, though. He didn't get to break the record, but he was involved in a couple of chances going forward. He was pretty good. I mean, I think that in games where we do need an extra attacking threat in the last 20 minutes or so, he'll provide some good play, because there are times that we've seen in the past where through 90 minutes he just gets lazy. And I know he's just a lazy player to begin with, but he gets especially lazy at certain points near the end of the game. And I think with this, he will work a little harder. He won't get gassed, and it's a role that I think he's comfortable with. He said he's comfortable with, and I'm happy that he's producing. And Alejandro Bedoya, I honestly didn't see much from him. He didn't do anything wrong, but I just didn't see too much to praise him for. Bedoya is still a player that I think is pretty talented, obviously capable of playing in the central midfield, in a number 10 role, although we don't normally see him there for the U.S., and out wide. So I think he's a good utility player, a player that's definitely going to be called up for the World Cup, I think, and we all hope that there isn't an injury or something like that, but I think he could fill in decently for an injured player. But at the same time, I really do think we've got something going here, and I really want to see a similar lineup come against Trinidad and Tobago, because we saw us play some good soccer, besides some lapses defensively between Omar Gonzalez and Jorge Villafana. At least Tim Howard did well decently to deal with those efforts. And I think that come Trinidad and Tobago, let's get an identity here. Let's get a starting lineup going. Let's get another 3-0 win and get some confidence going into this team. Get some confidence that we can compete in this World Cup. Maybe we can go farther than a round of 16. Maybe we can lock up kind of around a 16 finish if we have an easy group. So, I mean, yeah, I think that we can take the next step if Bruce Arena really doesn't change up that much, really keeps the same lineup. I don't have any substitutions that I want to make if I'm Bruce Arena right now. I don't, even though, like Jorge Villafaña's, I didn't think had the best game. Like, I don't want to start DeMarcus Beasley. I just want to keep everything the same, keep that identity, keep going forward, and and especially like an important player like Pulisic, who only played a little over the half. He should be coming back for this next game. He shouldn't be too tired, or I know he took some hits, but I mean he didn't look bad after he came back on. We were just worried about like his health, not his health, but his safety. I don't know. Yeah. So I think for Bruce Arena, you definitely have to go with a similar lineup if you want to for sure try to get 3 points against Trinidad and Tobago on Tuesday. But yeah, I think overall it was a good performance from the USMNT. Definitely some things we can work on, but I just really think that the key is putting Christian Pulisic at number 10. Obviously, for Borussia Dortmund, he's going to play in different positions. They have more creativity all around. But here, I think that there's no player that we have like Christian Pulisic that we can put at that number 10 position and help link the midfield and the attack like he can. And I think that he is just a very special player that I think we should take full advantage of for as long as he's on the team. And I think we can start now because he's already an elite player. He's already, a very, very established, mature, composed player who's, I think, probably a top 5 player in CONCACAF. And I think that it's not crazy to say that right now he's not far off from what Landon Donovan was in his prime. At a national team level, I mean, it's hard to argue with what Donovan did over the course of his career. But looking at talent, looking at, just the eye test, no discredit to Landon Donovan, obviously. Landon Donovan, I think, was one of the most probably the most electrifying player I've ever seen in a USMNT shirt. Maybe bar Christian Pulisic. And it's crazy because Pulisic's only 18. This isn't a U.S. men's national team thing. This is just a young talent thing in terms of all of European soccer. Like, you're looking at a player who is, in my book, has a top 10 prospect right now. And I don't think we should put him to waste at outside midfield. I mean, not that he won't do anything at outside midfield and won't create, but like I said, he just won't have the same impact. And, yeah, I'm just really excited. I thought that lineup was very good. I think everyone just got a little bit less emphasis, and Pulisic just got a little more emphasis on what his task was, and it just turned out to be a good game. And I'm really excited about that. I think that, honestly, Michael Bradley, maybe, even though I know his role was a little bit different, I thought he could have done a little bit more going forward. I know, like, on paper, his role is either a defensive midfielder or a stopper or really whatever you want to call that position. But I think that he can get a little bit involved more, especially in games like these. But, of course, play it by situation. I think it looks like he's been a good vocal leader and captain, ever since the Clint Dempsey got revoked from his captain status. And, yeah, happy with him. My brother told me, I think yesterday, that, like, maybe Bradley won't be starting by 2018. And I think that, there are really exciting players coming up right now. Weston McKennie, a couple others that you could argue, are rising and playing at a higher level. But I think Bradley just has this chemistry with the whole team. Everyone looks up to him, and he's also just so versatile in what he can do. And situationally, even though I'd like to see him start in a position like this most games, I think that he can do other things mid-game. Bruce Arena can switch it up if we need to attack a little more, and we can rely on Bradley to do something a little bit different. just for part of the game. Because, like, I've talked about the benefits of having him as, a defensive midfielder, which I do think, is his best position. I mean, there are games where he's taken over at center mid, and he's not going to take over in the position that he played today, or yesterday. But I don't think that with the talent we have, like Nagbe and Pulisic, we need him to take over games anymore, and I think it's more of a liability if he tries to do that in every game. So I think this is the best position that he can play, and I think that he is an important piece of the national team, and he should be at the 2018 World Cup, and I think he should be starting. Even if other players show a little bit more technical ability and are playing at a little bit of a higher level, I think that Bradley is important to the identity of this national team, at least for right now. So that's my response to Nihal. Speaking of Nihal, he should be on the podcast soon. Columbus Crew season has been extended a little bit because they made the playoffs, but it can't be too much longer, and I don't see them competing for like the last few rounds of this this playoffs. Like, I don't think they'll make the final, but we'll see. Definitely a team that's been very exciting. Kakuna Mane, Justin Miram, really good players. And, of course, you always have Higuain. That's kind of the leader. You can always rely on him to be pretty consistent. But, they're a good team, and I'm happy that my brother's working with them. But he should be back on soon, and we should be able to have a little bit more lengthy discussions, a little bit more interesting conversations, and I'm definitely excited to have him back on soon. But other than that, I will have a recap of the Trinidad and Tobago game. I apologize for the lack of content recently. At this point, I think it is kind of like I will be more motivated, and like we'll be mutually more motivated for both on the podcast. And I'm not going to promise anything after this qualifier. I will try to post podcasts over the weekend pertaining to the club season, because I am keeping track of soccer. I'm watching a lot of soccer, but in terms of the podcast and planning it out and recording it, I just haven't gotten around to it with college apps, and first semester senior year is just it's a little bit tough. So but I think that regardless of that, after the crew season ends, I'll be motivated, and Nihal and I will be posting content consistently. Until then, though, I'll do the best I can do. I'm not missing a U.S. game ever. I will always be covering a USMNT game, because I know that's what a lot of the listeners want. And also, Nihal and I have spent a lot of time studying the team, following the team, and it's kind of what we're best at in covering. So we have an email for this podcast, SoccerBrothersPodcast@gmail.com. We have a Twitter and an Instagram. Those handles are both at SoccerBrosPod. We're on SoundCloud, Google Play, Podkicker, iTunes. Catch us all there, and review and rate us. Give us some support. Ask us some questions on our email. We always love feedback. Thank you so much. And I will see you guys next time on episode 82 of the Soccer Brothers Podcast. Thank you so much.